It's Wednesday, 21 February. Welcome to the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. Let's get briefed. First, there are fresh concerns regarding reports that Russia may pursue space-based nuclear weapons, despite denials from the Kremlin. Also, we'll discuss the latest regarding the U.S. border crisis, as another Republican governor has announced that they will be deploying troops to aid Texas. But first, our afternoon spotlight. I want to begin today by following up on a story that we brought you last week concerning reports that Russia was seeking to deploy a nuclear weapon in space. Now, we're beginning to learn more about the specifics of the threat, as a number of unnamed sources, often called anonymous sources, have started to spill the beans to the press. U.S. officials believe Russia is developing a space-based anti-satellite nuclear weapon that could shut down everything from military communications to civilian phone-based services and apps if detonated, and that's according to a report by Reuters. The anonymous source told Reuters that the system would involve a nuclear explosive device placed into orbit. Another unnamed source, how many unnamed sources do we have these days, seemed to corroborate the story, telling Bloomberg on Tuesday that their understanding is that Moscow plans to deploy a nuclear weapon or a mock warhead into space sometime within the year. Now, one of the sources said that while U.S. officials do not believe the Putin regime actually intends to detonate such a device, and frankly, I'm not sure how they would make that determination with any confidence, concerns are high regarding the risk of an accidental explosion. Yeah, that would make sense, which would disable dozens of critical satellites and would have a debilitating effect on any ground-based devices that rely on satellite connectivity. And here's a hint, that would be a lot of devices. The commander of German Space Command, Major General Michael Traut, underscored the risks at a recent security conference in Munich, describing how such a detonation would cause an electromagnetic pulse or an EMP across low Earth orbit that would devastate any electronics or satellites that are caught in the blast. Traut said, quote, "If somebody dares to explode a nuclear weapon in high atmosphere or even space, this would be more or less the end of the usability of that global commons of orbit. Nobody would be immune from an action like that. No satellite, whether Chinese or Russian or American or European. If somebody calculates rationally, nobody would employ such a weapon in space." That would assume rational calculation, though, of course. If the sources are to be believed, it appears Putin may be bold enough to follow through. A third report from the New York Times on Saturday said that U.S. intelligence agencies have recently determined that Russia plans to launch a new secret military satellite, and speculation, by informed people who speculate, is that such a launch could be used to deliver a nuclear payload into space. Now, despite the mounting concern among the U.S. and her allies, Russian President Putin flatly denied the rumors on Tuesday. Well, that should do it then. Everybody can just rest at ease. In remarks, Putin stated, quote, "Our position is clear and transparent. We have always been categorically against and are now against the deployment of nuclear weapons in space. We urge not only compliance with all agreements that exist in this area, but also offered to strengthen this joint work many times," end quote. The agreements that Putin mentions include the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, and that was back when we used to call it outer space. And of course, everyone assumed that we would all have our own personal jetpacks, but I digress. That treaty bans signatories, which include Russia, from placing nuclear weapons or any other kinds of weapons of mass destruction into orbit. Just last week, a White House spokesperson said the system that Russia is purportedly developing would be a flagrant violation of this decades-old agreement. Well, yes, it would. The White House and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence did not provide further clarity on Tuesday, however, when asked for comment by Reuters. The reports come after Republican Representative Mike Turner of Ohio, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, cryptically warned last Wednesday of a, quote, "serious national security threat." Well, his remarks set off a firestorm of speculation and near panic in our nation's capital until reports emerged later in the day describing the possible Russian space-based nuclear system. Officials in D.C. have remained tight-lipped on the matter, however, but have stressed that it does not constitute an imminent emergency that should cause any alarm among the public or our allies. It's just a space-based nuke designed to destroy our access to TikTok and food delivery services and Google Maps. Otherwise, nothing to see here. Coming up after the break, we'll discuss the latest regarding the U.S. border crisis. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Afternoon Bulletin. As the chaos continues at the U.S. southern border, Republican Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota has added herself to the list of GOP governors who are sending reinforcements to Texas to aid Governor Greg Abbott. Noem made the announcement Tuesday that she'll be deploying additional South Dakota National Guard troops to the border to, quote, answer the call from Governor Abbott and aid in efforts to build fencing and a wall. Specifically, 60 South Dakota Guard members will be sent to Texas beginning in the spring, and they'll stay on a rolling basis over a 3-month period, according to a Fox News report. Noem said Tuesday, quote, "The border is a war zone, so we're sending soldiers. These soldiers' primary mission will be construction of a wall to stem the flow of illegal immigrants, drug cartels, and human trafficking into the USA." End quote. This will mark the 5th time that Noem has deployed troops from her state to the southern border since 2021. However, this time she said there will be a very important difference. She said in the past her troops were, quote, hampered by federal restrictions. She vowed that this time her office will ensure the troops are used not to, quote, facilitate an invasion, but rather to, as she says, stand up and stop it. The announced deployment comes after the South Dakota legislature became the first in the country to pass a resolution supporting Texas's right to defend itself. Abbott remains locked in a battle with the Biden administration as the state pursues their own solutions to the migrant crisis in the absence of federal action. And this has led to a back and forth in federal courts between Texas and the Biden administration. On January 22nd, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the U.S. Border Patrol agents had the authority to remove razor wire fencing that Texas had erected along the border. However, that decision did not provide any additional explanation or clarity. Abbott has since said that Texas's right to defend itself, quote, is the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary, end quote. Now, amid calls by Democrats for Biden to federalize the Texas National Guard, 25 Republican governors issued a joint statement on January 26th, giving Abbott their full support. Noem's Guard will join personnel from several other states. Most notably, earlier this month, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced he's sending as many as 1,000 Florida National Guard and State Guard members to Texas to provide support. And that, my friends, is the PDB Afternoon Bulletin for Wednesday, 21 February. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. I'm Mike Baker. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool.